Project Nomad version 1.32.0 is now available, and this is a massive update. AMD users finally get GPU acceleration for AI, our knowledge base got a complete overhaul, and you can now download maps by region instead of having to download the whole planet. And that's just the highlights. If you haven't updated Project Nomad, now is the time to do so. We put a ton of effort into these fixes, features, and improvements. And if you haven't tried Project Nomad yet, now would be a great time to get started. Just head on over to projectnomad.us for all of the info, but for now, let's dig into the details. All right, a super requested feature is the AMD GPU Acceleration. Now, our AMD users have kind of been second-class citizens for a little while because we had NVIDIA support originally, but no AMD support when it comes to Ollama, as well as AI inferencing of any kind. But now we do support AMD GPUs that have ROCm support with Ollama. We have tested this on a Radeon 780M iGPU as well as an RX 6800. So if you've already been running Nomad on your server and you've got an AMD GPU, your AI assistant is going to feel completely different. We also did a complete redesign of our knowledge base ingestion. So basically, with Project Nomad, one of the things that we're most proud of is the AI knowledge base. So if I come over here to knowledge base, this allows users to drag and drop files into this window up here. And then the AI will ingest the text of those files so that you can then run queries on it with AI. Now, this works with not only stuff that you update, but also anything that you've downloaded, right? So all of the ZIMs that you download into Kiwix, most of those can be indexed for the AI to use. So first and foremost, you are now prompted. Do you want to always ingest everything that gets loaded into Project Nomad, or do you want to do it on a file by file basis? So you've got this always versus manual toggle switch up here. We set it to manual by default because if you're on a CPU only install, this is going to peg your CPU for like days, right? If you have a ton of stuff to index, you are not going to have a good time. So you might want to set that to manual or not flip it to always, and then just pick and choose which actual ZIMs and text files you want to ingest. And we prompt you for that in the easy setup wizard, as well as the first time you open up the AI chat if you skipped the easy setup wizard during initial setup. In addition to that, we redesigned the way that the stored knowledge base files work. So you can see we have some errors that can surface here. Sometimes those are valid, sometimes they're not. The one thing about these ZIMs is they can get completely ingested if they are all text, but oftentimes the ZIMs have pictures embedded. They also have, maybe just a bunch of PDFs embedded, which those cannot be indexed by the AI. We're only indexing the text. So sometimes when we see something like this, it means that there's just a bunch of stuff that can't be indexed inside that particular ZIM. But ones that look completely indexed will just say index like this. Now you can delete these here. This doesn't delete the file off your disk. This only deletes the ingested data out of the AI database. And let me go download something else so we can actually see the processing queue. So I'm going to go to settings and we'll go to Content Explorer. And then here's a file, Project Gutenberg Library for Law, right? So we'll just download this ZIM here. We can see that it is in our active downloads. And then as soon as this has finished downloading, it looks like it's going pretty quick. There it goes. Now, if we go over to the AI assistant, we should see it in the list of, here we go. So here it is. It says not indexed because right now I am set to manual up here, but I can come down to anything that's not indexed and we can just say indexed. And then it queues that file for ingestion into AI so that you can ask questions against that content. And then up top here, we have a processing queue that shows you how far into ingestion any particular file is, and it'll stack those up and process them one by one. Now, something really interesting to note about these ZIMs that I was not aware of is that ZIMs are compressed by default, right? So when you put them on your disk and then we sort of extract those and then index them into the AI, the amount of disk space that's taken up by that ingestion, depending on how many pictures and non-indexable things are in that ZIM file, can be anywhere from 5 to 10x the size of the ZIM file. So if you've got a 10 gigabyte ZIM file that you're trying to index, it could end up being like 50 to 100 gigs on the disk once the indexing is complete. So just be very careful about that, and that's why we defaulted to manual unless you specifically say, no, I always want to index everything I download. And on top of this, if you are downloading anything, it's going to take a ton of space on the drive, like 50 gigs or more, or if it's going to take more than 10% of the free space that you have left, we are going to pop up warnings letting you know that before you actually do the ingestion. Okay, so huge redesign to our entire knowledge base and AI ingestion engine. We also have gotten a little bit more global. So for example, if we come over here to maps, well, first of all, there's been a ton of map improvements. So notice right off the bat, we are now displaying coordinates when you move the mouse around, the GPS coordinates or latitude and longitude. And so if we zoom in somewhere, right, we can actually now place a pin and you can call it, Reno or whatever, select a color. And one thing that was supposed to be in here, but we did not get it in, is actually adding notes as well. So the notes should be in like a 1.32.1 coming in the next few days. But you can save that, and now up here you've got pins, and you can actually fly to those pins by just clicking around up here. So big map improvements there, but additionally, if you come over here to Manage Map Regions, we had this before, right? Download a global map. This is the entire planet, but it's a humongous file. Not everyone necessarily wants to download the entire planet. So now you can download by country or region. So if you say choose countries, we've got North America, South America, etc. There's our regions. And then within each region, we have absolutely every single country available. So if I just want to download, Nicaragua, you can set your zoom level. 15x is 15 is the street level, and then all the way up to 1 or 2 would be a very high level view of that particular region. But it estimates the size. So Nicaragua is going to be 125 megs or so. We can hit start download, and then that will show up down here in our active downloads. And Nicaragua is actually already downloaded. It wasn't that big. So we are really trying hard to add more and more features for our international audience, and this is just one of the things that we have added. In addition to that, we also have in the Content Explorer, now we have different Kiwix library sources, right? So right here, the default Kiwix library, I think, is US based. Now we have all of these other mirrors that you can click on, and they give you the full whatever ZIM file library for that particular mirror. And so some of these are, European, there's other US-based ones. The Debian CDN is a global one. But in addition to that, if you have a custom ZIM source, you can click Manage Custom Libraries and then add your own, right? So if you know of like a college or university or something, or some, location where you can have a bunch of ZIMs stored, you can add a custom ZIM source, and then it will be selectable up here. And then you can just download whatever ZIMs you want. And on top of that, we have a number of other improvements, including NVIDIA GPU auto recovery. So sometimes when you make changes to the Ollama container in Docker, it loses its NVIDIA pass-through, so that Docker or Ollama is only using CPU to process, AI stuff, either the chatbot or the ingestion, etc. So we have some more checks that sort of auto-fix Ollama whenever that happens. And in addition to that, Ollama by default holds models in memory, right? So if you've got an 8 gig video card and you've loaded a 6 gig model, and then you're working with the, the chatbot, and you switch, and you switch your model in the middle of a chat, previously it kept the old model in memory and then would try to load the new model on top of the old model. So basically what would happen is there were instances where you would run out of VRAM, and then your model would be like half loaded in VRAM and half loaded, just in regular RAM, which of course is super, super slow. You want everything to be in VRAM if possible. So now when you switch models mid-conversation, it's going to prompt you, hey, are you sure you want to switch this model during this chat? And it actually unloads the previous one and then loads in the new one. So we're just trying to make the AI smarter and a lot more user-friendly. And for those of you who don't like AI, we've certainly heard from a lot of people that are like, I love all of this stuff, but I don't want any sort of AI stuff coming near me ever, right? In our easy setup wizard, we now added an AI step. So when you initially go through the easy setup wizard, if you don't select AI on step 1, there's no AI in this whatsoever, and you don't even get a step 4 in this easy setup wizard, right? So it completely skips anything related to AI. You don't have to use AI to use Project Nomad. All right, so on top of all of this stuff, there have just been a ton of bug fixes and back-end enhancements, just usability type stuff, quality of life fixes. Now you can update Project Nomad by going to Settings and then going to System Update. And if you're new to Project Nomad, just head over to projectnomad.us and there's a complete install guide right there on the homepage. All right, so huge thanks to all of the community contributors for this release. This was made much, much better because of you guys. And as always, Project Nomad is 100% open source and 100% free. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.